So here we are. Anyone at all? Okay. Sorry. You're very close.
Hi, good morning. Wonderful, thank you. Actually, all wonderful. Two, just one was a comment. I'm wondering if the chronic disease that we're going to see that you left out is chronic musculoskeletal problems.
That's one.
Okay.
The Blue Cross Blue Shield study did not address that. It's a big issue.
Yep.
So at Walgreens, I was the leader, the physician leader for all of our workman's comp.
Yep.
Major musculoskeletal issues in that population. And there are some fascinating companies out there doing virtual musculoskeletal care, which we actually brought in as an offering for employees with a significant ROI and, most importantly, employee satisfaction. So absolutely, musculoskeletal is a big issue.
And my question for you is this. My concern, I mean, it's not a concern. We know, I love telehealth. I'm a Kaiser patient, had a great experience in the last 2 weeks. My question to you is the continuity care issue, which kind of lends with interoperability. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so telehealth physicians can't be the patient-centered medical home. There's still a need for primary care, absolutely. But you know that study that I referenced about the hours per day, if you actually took the 30% of acute visits out of that, and that could be handled, most of those by telehealth, then it frees up the primary care physicians to do the preventive and the chronic disease management for high complex patients. And so that's where I see telehealth coming in. It can help with that on-demand care that quite honestly the primary care providers don't have the time for.
Yeah, so just in telehealth, so I mean, you're aware that Kaiser, we do direct-to-consumer telehealth. We actually have very intensive physician-to-physician telehealth for critical care services. So our PICUs routinely support our 21 ERs within our system. And it's really been amazing at helping to stabilize the most critically ill, the most sick, and sometimes worried well, too. We can avoid admitting someone to a hospital. There's an ER doc that just doesn't know a clinical problem. You can talk to one of the hospitalist or ICU doc and go, you know, you can go home. You can call your primary care doctor tomorrow. You don't have something that you need to be in the hospital for, and that connection really does help. So it is also on the high acuity side as well, but it's more doctor to doctor. You're not directly interfacing the patient. So I just wanted to call that out as well.
Hi, thank you so much. You know, I feel like all three of you are kind of echoing that there's a changing environment and patients are no longer really patients, they're more of consumers, and we need to kind of be flexible in how we adapt. Do you guys agree if that's kind of, okay. So I'm wondering if that signals that it's really time for a dramatic change in how we do things rather than, you know, trying to stay within legacy systems. Like, you know, I heard you just mention that telemedicine can't be primary care and they don't have time for that. But like, what about direct primary care? Is that something that you think can, you know, better achieve that goal? And also I'm curious if you even have that model in Canada.
I could give you just an overview of telemedicine in Canada. So actually for the more remote areas, telehealth does exist and is funded by the government, which is where most physicians are paid. So most of us are paid by our governments. However, in a lot of the suburban and city areas, telehealth is actually funded through private systems, through insurance companies actually, through private insurance companies, because most governments still don't recognize a virtual visit to be billable to the government. So that's just kind of lay of land. But that being said, going back to your question of allowing becoming more consumer-based, well, as Patrick mentioned, at the end of the day, you want to answer the needs of your patients, your consumers, and a lot of millennials, for better or for worse, are demanding this, and it does suit their scheduling much better. You don't want to take half a day or a whole day off just to go to a walk-in because your little child is sick, right? So if there is that kind of demand, then we must, I believe as a system, as physicians as well, find a way so that it works into the system.
So I love that question, and I am really behind alternative ways to deliver care. I am a huge fan of Medicare Advantage. I'm also a huge fan of these models like the ChenMeds, Iora, CareMore, Partners in Primary Care, Oak Street, that deliver it, and they deliver it in a high quality way because they allow their providers 45 minutes to an hour to see high complex patients. They're able to do that because these providers have panels of 500 to 700 patients, not a 3,500 like I did. And the main reason they're able to do it is because CMS and the government has said we're going to support Medicare Advantage by paying for higher risk patients in a reasonable way. And so if you see what's happened is MA, Medicare Advantage, has continued to be support from a funding standpoint, and then innovative companies, as I referenced, are coming into that space and delivering really high quality care. It's because the government is able to come up with a model that works. And why would the government support it? They see reduction in cost of care for high complex patients, and they see improved quality. So they're going to keep investing on that. And what you're seeing in the Medicare space is a major transition from fee-for-service Medicare to Medicare Advantage. 30% today of the folks project 50% are going to be in risk-based Medicare Advantage programs, in the next 5-8 years. And some people even projecting up to 80% within 10 to 15 years.
So I echo Patrick's sentiments exactly. I agree with all of what you just said there. And I'd say, when you think about change, I think there's evolution and I think there's revolution. And I think that all of us here in this room are experiencing a time that really needs revolution. And we really need to press harder. And there's going to be a steeper curve, but I think we can do it with the guardrails, as I think both of us have said, is quality is job one here, and we need to really maintain that. I'm a believer, I think cost is important, but I'm a believer, as I said, in looking at the patient journey and thinking about the process that they go through, and I think we can really build engaging solutions if we think about that. But yeah, I think we need to go fast right now.
You sharing your chatbot journey with us. And my question to you is, knowing what you know now from the evaluation of your program or your pilot, if you had to do it over again, would you go down the chatbot route, or would you just build a simple app? Because it seems to me that the stuff that people were using didn't really require this more sophisticated technology of an NLP-powered chatbot.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that's basically what I'm implying from presenting the talk this way, is that the brightest, shiniest object doesn't necessarily give you the most value, and that's what people wanted. Now, if I did it again, I would actually probably shift the curve a little bit and enhance it so you're not relying so heavily on natural language processing. But I mean, I do want to reiterate that I am optimistic about a potential future for this if you do it right. And I see this, and I think if I did it again, I would see it as an opportunity to learn from the NLP and engage the users with less technologically savvy, like chatbot solutions, and a little bit less AI. But you can guide them in and really test out what you need to do to learn more and develop. If you can bring them into the conversation. So if we had put out the right menus to say, hey, do you want to talk about which of these things you want to talk about? It would have been an easier portal of entry, and then they're not knowing that our chatbot's taking over. And we can really start learning from it and driving the conversations. The other thing is we have to be really, really careful that as I reiterate again, that it's actually doing it well. And I think natural language processing is not quite there. And I would have done I think I would have done more of analytical research prior to a patient launch, and do more tabletopping, set up a randomized control trial, kind of like the study I put up there that was from Semigren in JAMA in 2016. I think that's a good study design. I think we do need to learn more. Yes, I would make it a little bit less technologically driven, but I would still leave it in there so we can learn and we can grow from that, because I think we do need to get there eventually. So.
This is a question for Dr. Zhang. In Canada, do you have a single electronic medical record? Or is it split up by province or by city?
None of the above. So I guess it's something that I skipped over top because it would be a whole session on its own. So just ballpark. and really big overview. So you have the federal government that funds the different provinces as long as they go along the Canadian Health Act in terms of providing universally available. I mean, there's a few things that provinces have to achieve in order to obtain this funding, which is almost about half the provincial budgets. But operationally, it's every single province that determines budgets and that determines a lot of the policies and how things are run. So in a way, every province is a single payer. So you would a lot of people mistakenly assume that because of that, the decisions, it's like it comes from the top, and the whole province will have one single system. But unfortunately, there's a lot of other layers in which things get, I guess, spread out, so that the decision-making and budgeting goes really to the local level. So oftentimes, it's every medical clinic has their own EMR system or hospital unit, and the clinic here will not talk to the hospital or clinic on the other side of the street, which I think is something very similar here. And some of our biggest EMR systems, it's actually different per province as well. It's different from the US. So let's say Cleveland Clinic in Canada does use, I believe it's Epic that they use, right? But most of us, if we're just purely Canadian-based ones, if you talk about, let's say in Ontario, it used to be Nightingale, TELUS Health, which is a Canadian-based one, and then there's what's the other one? There's a few others, and in every province they have their own set of EMR systems. So I hope that answers.
First of all, a friend of mine has been the chief medical officer of OTN in Ontario. It's a huge concern there. I want to make a comment about what I think is a tremendous opportunity, and Medicare is sending out all the signals for this, which is remote patient monitoring. They have simplified, they basically have doubled down on reimbursement, streamlined the codes, decreased the amount of time that physicians need to spend, and done everything possible to plead with doctors to please set up a formal RPM program in your practice. And essentially, the latest guidelines just came out, the final guidelines just November 1st, which also says that you can outsource. You don't have to have a supervision. You can have a general supervision, so we can outsource to companies to take care of basically everything. So essentially, there's only 2 codes, as opposed to some of the things that private insurance has, all those codes. There's a monitoring code, and there's a management code, and then there's a setup fee, and that's it. So this is the ultimate in practice efficiency because there's no encounters. So you could have 10,000, a big cardiology group could easily have 10,000 patients on remote monitors, up to 2 of them being paid for at a time, without having to see these patients. That's what physicians really want, I believe, which is to be able to go home at night and yet get a continuity income for years based on their setup. So I think this is an area to pay attention to.
Thank you all 3, wonderful lectures. Just a very practical question, and I'm not sure about how this works in Canada, but I truly wonder how it happens in the United States. And that is issues with licensing, moving across state borders, and then medical malpractice. I know that when I was in practice, my medical malpractice provider was not very fond of telemedicine, not seeing a patient, and making a decision-making process around that.
Yeah, that's 2 great questions. Every state requires, if you're doing telemedicine, that the provider is licensed in that state. You can imagine the challenge and the headache that is for any telemedicine organization. There's this new unicorn physician out there, those who have licenses, believe it or not, in 50 states. We have a few of them practicing off our platform. So the government has made it difficult in terms of state licensure. In terms of malpractice, I know my organization, I think the other ones also do, is we provide the malpractice for them because it may not fall under their malpractice insurance. The average physician on our platform practices about 10 hours per week, so they have a day job too, right? And so they have their malpractice insurance that covers them for the day job, but then we have to provide the malpractice liability for whatever they do on our platform.
For those who are interested in Canada, very similar. So if you see a patient in province X, you have to be licensed that province. And for malpractice, because it's for telemedicine, because it's not publicly recognized, I believe you have to go through it. The patient will sign a waiver if they use that to say, I will not sue. the physician. I think. Though you still have to be licensed and have your medical malpractice license as well.
All right, thank you, everybody. This was a great session. Thank you to our speakers and the audience for being here. I think a few learnings that I've gotten out from today is, think like the user, think through the processes, and I think many people do mention that. Realize what the problem is, and then find the fit which really works. And I think it's hard to replicate a system across so many variety of different kinds of problems that we have, so many different silos, different verticals that we have that we learned. And I think a thought that I have is, for us as physicians, what can we do to cross the bridge? I mean, it's a thought, I hope you, from all that we heard today, you go back and think about it and maybe break through those barriers, try something, fail somewhere, but learn from it and do something so we can advance not only the society but ourselves as well. So there is a lot of problems, and we can do that. All right. Thank you very much. And so now we break for lunch. And after that, at 1:30, we convene over here for the soapbox. And as well as there are two breakout sessions, social media and medical device. That is on the 3rd floor in room number 341. So one after the other. So 1:30 is social media, and at 2:30 we have the breakout session on medical device.
1 second before we break for lunch, just a quick announcement. So if you look outside to your right, there's a poster of Dr. Zhang. So we put Sharpies near every poster for you guys just to sign and give feedback about their lectures. And then if you guys, just to give them feedback, we can always help them out. After all, we want everyone in this room to succeed. And then, if you guys can't find their posters or anything, there's a main wallpaper, you could say, out in the main conference hall. You guys can sign that, give us feedback about how we did today, and just, we could really use all the help that we can get. So.
Oh, one more final announcement before we break. Sorry, I forgot about this. After the conference, you will receive an online survey, of course, asking for feedback about the conference as well as the content, the topic, and everything. For those who do need CME credits, please ensure that you mention your name and email in that, because the CME credits will go to you via email. Thank you very much.
Now let's really break for lunch.